Welcome to Business Notes. I'm your host, Diane Bogino. Our guest today is Jay McDonald. Jay is a serial entrepreneur and a board member of multiple companies. For the past 10 years, Jay has been an Atlanta Master Chair of Vistage Worldwide, the world's leading CEO peer organization. Jay's been a CEO, business owner, successful leader, and keynote speaker. Throughout his career, Jay has been involved in multiple businesses and industries where he and his team have significantly grown revenues and profitability, creating successful exits and value for owners. He serves as an executive leadership coach to many outstanding leaders throughout the South. Jay often says he's flunked retirement 5 times. Now let's hear Jay's ideas on leadership for today and beyond. Jay, thank you for being on Business Notes this morning. It is great to see you.
It's wonderful to see you, Diane.
It has been a while, and you are so accomplished, Jay. I hardly knew where to begin with this, but a few little things that people probably don't know about you is that you have spoken to over 33,000 people with your keynote speaking. You were an Olympic torchbearer in 2002, and you and I had the privilege of working together at one time.
Well, you made me look better than I should have. It was great working with you, and as always, you do a wonderful job.
Well, thank you. It was great working with you too. But Jay, now you're doing coaching, working with Vistage. Why should someone join a leadership peer group or get a coach?
I actually asked my members and got feedback from them so that I would approach it from an actual user, a person being coached, and in a peer group. And some of the things they said, one was that it allows them to get out of their day-to-day routine and their day-to-day rhythm in a positive way. It's a positive disruption, for lack of a better way of saying it. And it allows them a time to reset their brain. They get to work on the business instead of always working in the business. Most leaders of organizations are lonely. You've always heard the expression, it's lonely at the top. And it can be because, not because you have to be lonely, there are ways not to be, but you have to be careful about whom you speak to about certain things. There's confidentiality, there's impacts on different people that you deal with, whether it's your employees or your customers or your vendors, your professional advisors, attorneys, accountants, and so forth. So a peer group is agenda free. The only objective of anybody in these groups is to make one another better. And everything in the meetings and one-to-one sessions with me, anything we do is the Las Vegas rule. What happens here stays here, so it's confidential. And all of the members in these groups are not competitors with one another or in the same industry. So you've got collective wisdom. Sometimes the knowledge of the group is better than the knowledge of one or two individuals. They create a bond and a trust that's second to none. I'll give you a funny side story. When I started doing this, and as you know, I spent the bulk of my career running and owning businesses. So I was a CEO like the people I coached for over 35 years. I had a mentor who was kind of helping me learn to be a coach, even though as a CEO, you're coaching employees and different people, but it's different, a different kind of coaching. And after a meeting or two, I said to them, I thought we would be talking mostly about business issues, people and people, challenges and people opportunities, finance and accounting, technology, operational things, and lean manufacturing, those sorts of things. Um, but I'm finding they want to talk about a lot of personal things too. And this person told me, Jay, you sign up CEOs, or it doesn't matter what the title is, business owners, but human beings show up. And that bond and trust causes them to talk about anything because they don't have people. It might be aging parents. It might be a child with a learning disability, or a family member that has just encountered a health diagnosis that is concerning. It can be anything, or it may be something they're wrestling with personally that affects their business. Our life affects our business. So I thought that was interesting. The other few things, none of us know what we don't know. That's sort of a given. And one of the values of a peer group is when you process an issue or discussion opportunity or a challenge, and you get input from another 14 or 15 people who are in roles similar to yours. Every person in that group has a different set of life experiences, business experiences, and so forth. And I tell my clients I learn more often than they do, probably just because of the wonderful gift of getting to do what I do. They're aha moments because people come up with ideas and suggestions or share experiences that you never would have dreamed up without that sort of atmosphere. And that's life too. You don't have to have that from a peer group. You can get that anywhere, but that's a good place for that because it fosters it. The members have a growth mindset. If it's not a club in the sense that you get blackballed or you get up or down, but people are wanting other members to share time with that are going to help them grow and contribute. So it's a give and take. And if you're just there to take, that won't work. If you're arrogant, that won't work. You have to check your ego at the door. We have top flight subject matter experts that speak to 2/3 of our meetings on everything. We've had a lot recently on diversity and inclusion and how to deal with the social environment that we are currently in. You have access to the Vistage website that connects you with over 23,000 members around the world, so you can ask any question about anything, either confidentially or you can show who you are. And there are all sorts of white papers and other things and videos of different speakers. So on almost any subject that you want to learn about, you've got resources. I do one-to-ones with all these leaders, and one of them told me one time I was the mirror she looked into that didn't always smile back. So as a coach, I try to be a truth teller. There's accountability, group accountability from each member. So if you say you're going to do something, you're going to get asked about it, and you're going to have an accountability partner that you check in with and so forth. But you get to self-select what you're going to do. Nobody is telling you do A, B, and C. I tell people I'm more the question person than the answer person, even though I may have experienced whatever it is. If they ask and or want to know, have I done this or experienced this? My answer, if I have, is yes, but I'm me and I was in the role I was in, and you're you and you're in your role. I'm happy to share what I did and why, but that may or may not be relevant to you. You have to own and decide. Otherwise, accountability doesn't work. And um, so, someone that will ask you the tough questions and give you candid feedback, and someone who's invested in your success. The average tenure of members worldwide is over 7.5 years. So it's not something people just join for a short time. I've got two members that have been members over 25 years, and they're running major companies, but also have smaller companies too, with members that have been, double digit members. Um, Exits, people have sold their business intentionally for collectively over several $billion. So there's a lot of success there. And with the pandemic, every member that I had, every company uh, that was eligible, I have a few uh, executives and industries that are, if you have more than 500 employees, you weren't eligible. If you were a bank, you weren't eligible, those sorts of things. Uh, so of the ones who were eligible, 100% got it. And a lot of our time during those few weeks and months was helping people understand it, what to do, what not to do, and so forth. And their loans total over $48 million. And it looks like, knock on wood, are going to receive virtually 100% forgiveness. Some were in industries where they decided uh, to uh, keep their employees and do certain things, even though they weren't doing business because of, CDC rules and other things. And some decided it was better for some of their people to get the enhanced unemployment, at least temporarily. They hired them all back. And so they didn't, they knew they weren't going to get forgiveness of 100%, but almost all did. So anyway, it's a great experience for me, and I believe an exciting experience for the folks we work with.
Right, right. Another good experience I think you have is serving on boards. So tell us what benefit you get from doing that.
But first, I would reverse it a little bit. Hopefully, the board, the company that I'm serving on, gets more benefit than I do. I'm doing it primarily for them and because they have a need. But serving on a board does provide you the benefit of working with the leadership and ownership of a company. Often these boards, that at least the ones I serve on, are privately held companies. I have served on private or public boards too in the past. And so you want to align the owner's objectives and purpose and goals and strategy with the management. So our role as a board is to help the leaders grow, the CEO and the management team. Boards have to be careful not to meddle and not to get in the weeds to the degree of micromanaging. Any board that I've served on, we've tried to clarify the roles of the boards, of the committees of the boards, and our governance, process with the roles of the CEO and management. The CEO, she or he, is responsible for running the company and hiring the people and evaluating the people, paying the people, and so forth. The board may set guidelines and direction. Uh, a strategy has to be set, basically a roadmap on where you're going, and it has to have logic in it that comports with the competitive environment that the business is in and the other socioeconomic trends going on, the political environment, and technology and disruption. So many businesses are changing, so you have to create innovation. So you want them. Our board's role and satisfaction you get is a board is just a smaller peer group of individuals whom often are put together because of their various skill sets and backgrounds and experience. So we, as a board, have to work together, and we benefit from learning from one another and sharing our experiences. But as a board, we've got to be in alignment and in sync, and ideally create that same alignment and synchronicity with the CEO. And when you do that and you see a company, when a great plan comes together, and the plan generally should be and is developed and emanated from management, and then the board will approve it, maybe ask questions and suggest tweaks here and there. And it provides accountability, but there's two-way accountability too. We have board evaluations regularly. We have committee evaluations regularly. And of course, the board is responsible for overseeing and managing the compensation of the senior executives, certainly the CEO and maybe one or two other people. And you also have to make sure you're doing what the owners want to do. Sometimes owners want dividends. The more you pay out in dividends, the less you have internally for growing the business, which means you're going to have to get external sources for that. So just balancing that, but also if you have assets that you can sell or acquisitions you can make to increase the revenues and earnings of the company, you can grow that way. So you're trying to grow both value of the business long term and whatever current income opportunities if the business has the ability to do that for the owners short term. So it's rewarding because you're helping a company go to the next level. And I encourage leaders to have some sort of board. It may be an advisory board where the board really is not overseeing anything. They're just giving input, versus a fiduciary board where the board actually has liability and is making decisions and is responsible for using good business judgment and making decisions that affect the company and the shareholders in a positive way.
So it's important for leadership and the board to have open communication and to be above board with each other, because otherwise the company's going to lose their direction. Would that be a correct statement?
Well, absolutely. There needs to be complete transparency, and to the degree you can, there needs to be alignment. You can't have two directions for the business, and if there are differing opinions, and it's certainly and often there are disagreements, or disagreements probably the wrong word, different opinions on the best way to go A or B, and it's up to the ultimately up to the management to drive the boat, so to speak. So you have to let them do that, but the direction of the boat and the bigger picture things, how do you want to finance it? Where do you want to be 5 years from now, 2 years from now, 30 years from now? And there are lots of paths to get to those places. And some people kind of get tied up in decision making, saying, I've got to make a perfect decision and I got to be 100% right. Years ago, when Hugh McCall, who was the head of North Carolina National Bank, which has become Bank of America, made an acquisition of the CNS Bank here in Atlanta, which was the largest bank in Georgia, and at one time the largest bank in the South. I wasn't there at that time, even though I spent my early career at CNS. I'm told he brought the whole employee group together and said, we're not looking for 100% solutions. We're looking for 80% solutions. If we have to have perfect solutions, we'll never get anything done, and the world will pass us by, and we'll get bulldozed by competition. So it's okay to break a little glass, just learn from it, sweep it up, and don't make the same mistakes over and over again. And the beauty of most decisions, there are a few decisions we have in our lives that are life and death, or till death do we part, and so forth. But most decisions we make in business allow us to make another decision. So I look at decisions like branches of a tree. Your first decision is that first limb you climb out on, and you get to choose a different fork in the road, so to speak, anytime you choose. So, push the envelope and get out there, and be more proactive in making decisions than waiting for perfection. And some personality types are perfection oriented, so leaders have to be aware, if they're that way, to have people around them that will push them, or if they have people in their organization who are that way, to give them nudges too, and say it's okay to innovation and positive business disruption comes from trying things. And you're not going to try things if fear's your primary mantra.
That's wise advice. Wise advice. Jay, years ago, you wrote a book that was published by the American Bankers Association, but today you have a program for on finance for people that are not professional financiers. So tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
I spent my early career learning and being a banker. I don't know how great a banker I was, but I tried to be pretty good. And as a part of that, I did have the privilege of co-writing a book with John McKinley, a coworker, on corporate banking, a practical approach to lending, which dealt with how you make loans as a banker and how you analyze financial statements and how you assess business risk and the things that a banker does. So one of my CEOs asked me, the CEO said, I've got great operating leaders of each of the segments of my business, some, like the chief financial officer and the people in accounting and so forth, are pretty good with numbers and finance. But most of the others are not. They've just never been trained that way. Could we put together a program to do that? So we put together a 1 day a week, 10 session program that covers a fundamental understanding of how financial statements work, from the balance sheet and the income statement to the cash flow statement, how all these things tie together, what's the difference in profits and cash flow, what are some of the key performance indicators in a business. And I'll in this 10 weeks, I'll have these leaders bring the financial statements of their business units in, and we'll, as a group, look through those and have them talk through those and see if there are any things there. What's the mix of your fixed cost and your variable cost? What are your margins and how might you improve those? We look at how businesses are financed, the different ways businesses can raise capital, how businesses are valued. We will be using a great book that called Financial Intelligence, which is a layman's book, but it's a bestseller and written by folks that, it's the best book I've found that's current, that helps people understand things in everyday language. And I've also asked each member to subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, at least electronically, because we will bring in current things going on each week that relate to some of the things we're talking about, and talk about those. And the one of the final sessions will be their CFO actually coming in and walking through their overall course. This is a Fortune 500 company with 15,000 employees, so it's publicly traded, so all their information is public, but just taking one of our sessions to, after they've learned the fundamentals about what they do and about financial statements in general, and we'll have a number of examples as we go through, then we'll wrap it up with them learning more about how everything comes together for their whole business.
Hmm. That's an excellent idea that you have about the Wall Street Journal and helping them keep up with trends, because that's such an essential activity for leaders to do.
Current events, I mean, you need to know it for just your business, because you've got to be able to adapt, but you also need to another part of your business, you need to know how any of these things might impact the lives of the people that you work with. And human beings show up at work, so they are affected by everything going on in the world. So staying current on what's happening is really important.
Yes. So, Jay, what do you think makes a great leader?
As you might imagine, I have pretty strong opinions on that. And I'm not going to provide these in any particular priority. I think they're all important. I've touched on some of them already. Excellent self-awareness. You've got to really know yourself. And by that, I mean, understand what makes you tick and what you're really good at and what you might not be so good at. Because in my opinion, if you do things on grades like elementary school, you can't be an A in everything. And so you've got to decide what, one of the things I've done with people over the years, and I actually did it with myself when I was young and in graduate school, was I created a pie chart of my life. How did I spend my time? How much was spent on family? How much was spent on recreation? How much was spent on work? How much, all church, religion, other activities, and so forth. And then, one of the things I get from some people, leaders and others, well, I don't have enough time to do this or that. And I have a trick. It's not a magic trick, but it's just a question. I said, well, how many hours in a day do you have? Of course, they say 24. And I'll actually get it down to seconds, but I won't do that here in the interest of time. And I said, well, how many hours in a day do you think I have? Well, what about Diane? Well, I said, it's not that you don't, we all have the same amount of time. It's how we use our time. So instead of saying you don't have enough time, perhaps you should say, I don't make enough time. But the only way you can make enough time, since you only have 24 hours, is to stop doing something so you can do something else. So taking that inventory of how you're spending your time too is a way for productivity. Another quality of a great leader is emotional intelligence and empathy. Understanding what makes other people tick, putting yourself in their shoes or in their position, understanding we've all heard the golden rule, which is do in the Bible, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Somebody, one of the speakers we had several years ago, talked about the platinum rule, and the platinum rule is treat others the way they would like to be treated. The golden rule is a little self-centered, not intentionally, I don't think, but it's about how you want to be treated, not how they want to. So think about that. I think servant leadership is important with a strong purpose and vision. Competence obviously is important. Interpersonal competence as well as technical competence and skills, and you can develop those. I think a huge asset for any leader is curiosity. Just asking questions and peeling back the onion, so to speak, and digging deeper. When we process issues, the leader will say, well, I want to solve this problem because of A, B, and C, and here's what I've done about it so far. And oftentimes, probably more than half, will go through that, and the peer group will ask questions for clarifying, digging deeper. And then I will ask the leader, is the issue that you stated initially still the issue? And many times it's not, because it was much deeper. It was a symptom and not the root cause. So curiosity helps you learn and pull these things out. I talked about decisiveness. Leaders can't be namby-pamby, and they can't be, you can't avoid conflict. I tell my leaders that feeding the elephant in the room does not make the problem go away. The elephant just keeps growing. And whatever that problem is that you're avoiding is going to get worse. And it will either blow up, so it might go away in that way, and that's the worst thing perhaps that can happen. But there are people that think if I ignore it or I just act like it's not happening, that it'll be good. And conflict is no fun, but it, it does reap dividends if you do it. Uh, Leaders have to be courageous. Sometimes they have to make tough decisions that are never easy. And one of the things that I think I learned as a leader, if you have strong values and if you share, and if you're you personally, but the organization also has strong values and your culture is alignment of the people values and the corporate values, then tough decisions and courageous decisions get easier because they're value based and you're making value trade-offs and you're trading off on what's most important. Uh, Toughness has to be coupled with fairness, though. You can't just be a jerk. And some people in leadership roles are. You've got to be developers of other leaders. I think the best leaders create other leaders who create other leaders. So your influence gets spread far beyond your organization that you may be leading. You've got to be a lifelong learner. You've got to be a sponge for getting better. An excellent communicator, both verbal communication and written communication, and you can't beat around the bush. You got to create clarity in how you communicate so that people know exactly what you mean and what's important. You need to be professional in every way. And what does that mean? I, when people ask me that, I said, we know it when we see it. And you can tell when some people walk in the room or when they speak, there's wisdom there. They carry themselves in a certain way. They're respectful. So you need people skills. You've got to be, as a leader, you've got to be able to identify and attract talent and as well as develop. You got to be a great listener. God created APG Anini, the founder of Bank of America, said God made 2 ears and 1 mouth, and they should be used in that proportion. I say we'd probably be better off if God had made 6 ears and 1 mouth. But most leaders I know are good listeners, and they listen to learn, not to reply. High energy. Any role of success requires a lot of energy, and so you need to take care of your health and get decent sleep and so forth. But when you're in the game, you've got to be energetic. You've got to be authentic, a real person, straight shooter, wisdom in what you say and what you do. People pay attention more to what you do than what you say. Have high integrity and build trust. Trust is the glue that makes an organization work. Every great leader I know has an ability to focus like a laser, not to be distracted and be out left field all the time focused on something, but to focus their attention in a way that gets results and gets to the heart of whatever the issues are.
Mm.
I say leaders need humble self-confidence. You need to be confident to be a leader, but you don't need to be arrogant. Humility is an important element of anything. They've got to be accountable and responsible. Leaders give credit to others and they accept the blame for the things that don't go so well. And they also praise in public and give constructive criticism in private. Don't ever criticize in public. obviously we've got public leaders who don't follow some of these things I'm saying, but um, you got to have fun in a responsible way and don't take yourself too seriously. You got to be human and you've got to show vulnerability. There's a great speaker and author, Brene Brown, who has written and given speeches and wonderful videos on vulnerability. But a big part of gaining trust and confidence of the people that you work with is showing them that you're a human. You don't have all the answers. You screw up with different things. You may be a goofball on some things. Hopefully it's not the business, but we all are how God made us and we can always continue to improve, but it's okay to let them know that, you're not perfect. They have passion for what they do. Many would, if one of the questions I asked myself back when I was in school and writing this paper on myself, this self-analysis, was what would I do if money were no object? And I used to ask that in interview questions for certain employees. I wanted to understand what made them tick. And my answer back then was I would probably have been a high school football coach. And my son asked me when he was growing up, he's an adult now, and played sports. And he said, Dad, why didn't you ever become a coach? You said that was one of your things that you would have enjoyed. I said, well, I didn't feel like I could make enough money to, have the lifestyle that you and your sister and our family needed. And I said, how wrong was I on that? These coaches, the good ones, are multi-millionaires, but anyway, but I'm getting to sort of do that now. So I just sort of gone full cycle. So I'm engaging that passion that I unearthed in my early 20s. Finally, a leader is one whom others will follow. Can't be a leader without followers. Having a title doesn't make you a leader. Having followers who respect you and look up to you is what makes a great leader. Thank you for
Absolutely.
asking
Yeah.
that.
Jay, what do you mean when you say that life is a contact sport?
What I mean by that is the separation of six is actually relatively true, that all of us are connected through roughly 6 degrees of separation. And we are micro messaging every single person we ever come in contact with from the time we're little children till we push up daisies or what have you. So by being a contact sport, you're making an impression on everybody you know or see. And when my son was 10 years old, he and his next door neighbor friend had a lawn cutting business in the community. And he told me one day, he said, Dad, people will pay you a lot of money if you'll do a job for them better than they'll do it for themselves. And that's true. So no matter how menial the job or the role or task is or how big it is, do your best and put your best foot forward. Every opportunity I've had in my life, I had a resume when I got out of college, and I created a bio when I started coaching to put on my website and for speaking engagements, because somebody like you or others would have to introduce me and I needed something like that. But I didn't get positions other than the early ones in my career because of that resume or bio, I got positions because someone knew of an opportunity, came to me and said, Jay, such and such, we talked about boards earlier. Network Communications, the company we work together with, that you headed our training and were a key factor in our HR area, and I was president and CEO. The way that came about was one of our board members, Roy Burnett, uh, and I were at a cocktail party for Georgia Tech and University of Georgia graduates. It was a fundraiser for what now is Children's Health Care. It was Evanston Children's Hospital back then. And we were talking and he said, your name came up today and a board I serve on. We're looking for an additional board member, and I suggested that we consider you because of your operating background and the companies you've run and your financial background and so forth. And he told me a little bit about this company, which was NCI, Network Communications. And he said, would you like to meet the owners of the company and other board members and so forth and learn more about it? I said, sure. So I ended up becoming an outside director of that company. Fast forward a few years later, the day after the Braves won the only World Series they won in Atlanta in 1995, we had a strategic retreat scheduled at Reynolds Plantation. So we were there, and the management team was there, and the owners and all of the board members. And this was when the internet was just starting to take off. And we were in the publishing and printing business, the largest real estate advertising company in the world. And we had developed websites for each of our publications, and we knew that was going to be we thought, a big opportunity and potentially a disruptive one too. And so we decided at that meeting collectively, again, alignment of board and management, that we wanted to significantly grow the company and we wanted to expand its current businesses and also expand the others. But we also decided, which is back to self-awareness, the two owners were 36 and 40 at the time, and brothers, and it had been started by their dad. And they understood that they didn't have the experience to take the company from where it was to where it wanted to go. So we decided at that meeting that we needed to find a CEO. And one of the brothers kiddingly said to me as we left the meeting, why don't you come do this? You've run other companies successfully, built them, sold them, and we trust you. You understand our business. You have your own investment banking firm doing mergers and acquisitions, but you can kind of quit taking assignments and wind that down. And I said, oh, sure thing. I didn't think he was serious. I just sort of sloughed it off. And then a few weeks later, he and the same director that introduced me to the board, who was still on the board, called and said, we were serious about that. We'd really like it. So that's how I became president and CEO and ultimately an owner, one of the owners of that company. Mm. Never would have happened except for different people I knew through other things. So the contact sport piece is just pay attention, keep Harvey McKay wrote a book, Swimming with the Sharks years ago, and he was a great. He got his couldn't get his book published for a while, and this was way before laptop computers and so forth. Uh, so finally, he went to the publishing companies, and there were things called Rolodexes that had cards of contact, and he had several hundred of them. So he put them all in boxes and crates and took them into these publishing houses and say, these are all the people who know me and that I know. Even if only 5% of them buy books, we'll make money on the book. And that's how he got a big publisher to publish it. So keep good contact. We've got all kinds of software for doing that now. And you've got social media and other things, which has really great things and not so great things. But all of those things can influence your ability to influence others, and it can not only create opportunities, but it also creates things that you can do to help other people. My social media profile, some people tease me that I must know everybody, but I've got over 31,000 followers on LinkedIn and connections, and 25,000 Twitter followers and so forth. Not to, it's not a game of how many can you get, but I won't take time here, but I can give you all sorts of instances where somebody has contacted me who was applying for a job and said, well, you're connected with so-and-so. Can you tell me a little bit about them? Would you mind saying something about me? Can I bring up your name? How well do you know them, or how well you don't? One person I met said, I want to meet you for lunch. I've had this happen before. We've got more mutual connections than any other person I'm linked in with. And so we met. He's a young guy, creates websites, one of the best in the world at it. And he said, how do you know so-and-so? And I told him, how do you know this? And he said, you actually know all these people. But I don't know all of them, but I know most of them pretty well. So it's just a smart thing to do. So.
Right. And that story about network publications speaks highly about your integrity too. So I just have a couple more questions. I'll let you go because I know you're busy, but why have you flunked retirement 5 times, Jay?
To be honest, I really only flunked it once. And the first business that I was an owner in and president of was the largest sporting goods distributor in the South. And we were probably the largest in the country, but being private, and most of the others were private, there were no real metrics. But we were the #1 supplier of all the companies we represented, and they were the biggest, so probably by default we would have been. So I just turned 43, and I thought, and I had a little bit of money from the transaction. So I said a couple of things to myself. I'm not going to set an alarm clock ever again in my life. That didn't last but about a week. And I don't have to work again. So whatever I do, I'm going to do what I enjoy. So after a few months of traveling around the world and doing kind of retaking up golf and learning it, and again, because during the sporting goods time, my kids were at ages where they had a lot of activities and I was traveling a lot, and I just it wasn't time to do that. And other things, and I saw a lot of retired friends who were older than I, who played golf all the time, played gin rummy all the time, and some drank all the time. And I could do a little of each of those, but I couldn't and didn't want to do any of it all the time. So it didn't take long for me to realize how much I missed being a part of something larger than I was. And I needed challenge and purpose, and everybody's different. I think everybody needs purpose. Working may not be someone's purpose, and that's fine. They may have a different cause. And I wanted to make a difference. And so every day, uh, so a group that used to work for me when I was in the bank, all but one, and his wife worked for the bank, and he worked for the investment banking firm Robinson Humphrey. Anyway, several of them had left banking after I left banking and gone into investment banking, and they decided to start a boutique investment banking firm doing middle market mergers and acquisitions, $200 million revenue companies or smaller. And they asked me to join them as a principal, and I did, and did that for 18 months and enjoyed it, and then created my own investment banking firm doing similar things, not competing with them, but so by engaging yourself, you learn new things, you stay energized. I think it makes you healthier. I think it sparks your brain. Some people say you live longer. I mean, one of my customers when I was in the sporting goods business, we did uniforms for all the colleges and professional teams. So Alabama was one of we did all the uniforms for all the teams in the South. And I remember getting to know Bear Bryant a little bit, not buddy, but he died within months after he retired from coaching. And that's sad, but his life was kind of wrapped up in that. So I didn't want that to happen. So continuously growing yourself. And I love seeing other people grow and succeed, and I like to give back to others. So these other times that I have flunked retirement, I knew I was going to flunk it when we grew businesses like Network and sold it to private equity or other companies that we built and sold over different times. I knew there would be a next chapter in my life that would be productive, rewarding, and hopefully contributing positively to others. And so this is the 6th chapter of my life.
Mm. And Jay, if someone wants to work with you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
They can reach out to me via my email, which is relatively easy to remember. It's JAY, my first name, at JAY McDonald, McDonald, like the hamburger, at my first and last name.com, j@jmcdonald.com. Or they can go to my website, which has contact information and so forth on it. And obviously any that want can link in with me too, but or Twitter or any of these other things. But my website is also jmcdonald.com, spelled out with all the wwws and other stuff in front of it. But if you Google that, it'll pop up.
Good. Jay, I really appreciate your time today, and you have brought some profound information for our leaders for today and beyond. And thank you again for your time.
Diane, thank you. It's always wonderful to see you. I'm glad we connected, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to do this. And you're doing a great service to the folks who all get to see these interviews that you do. And I look forward to all of those who do see it, to hopefully getting to know you and expanding your context for it a little bit.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Business Notes. We've been speaking with Jay McDonald, serial entrepreneur, board member of multiple companies, and an Atlanta Master Chair of Vistage Worldwide. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, bringing you business ideas you can bank on.